In the current segment, we will have an introduction and looking at how we use Power Query. In this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we work with Power Query and how we extend the Power Pivot data model. What we will do is we will extend the Power Pivot data model with data sourced from two Power Query queries. The queries will retrieve and transform sales quota data from CSV files which are stored in the file system. The Power Pivot data model will be extended to include a new table based on the query, and the new data model calculations will include a key performance indicator to monitor salesperson sales performance in this example. So to help us, here is an example of the data that we want to transform. We can see the data is sorted by employee ID, and we have some other information in here. We've got month information as well. So we are going to need this file path later. We can see we want to import all of these files into Power Query, not just one of them. So I'm going to use that piece of information later. So in our workbook, what we're going to do is go to Power Query and make the connection to import the data. So do from File and we'll select from CSV. In the file name box, we are going to simply paste the folder path that we see here, click and enter. Now this is exactly where we were, so that's fine. We're just going to take one of these files, the one that we looked at a moment ago, 2009 North America. So now we have the query window appear. For Power Query, in the Query Settings pane at the right hand side, here we are simply going to rename the query so that it appears better. We're going to call it Quota Extract. Once we've done that, what we're going to do is unpivot these tables. These are all the same value, just in different columns. So to do that, I'm going to select all of the columns. Then what I'm going to do is go to the Transform group just at the top, which we see there. And what I will do then is I will click on Pivot, which we can see here. We're going to select Unpivot Columns. Now what we want to do is rename these. Attribute isn't very meaningful on its own, so we're going to rename that so that it seems more clear. We're going to call it month number. We'll rename this one as well. And we are going to call it quota amount. And press return. So this query has returned 3 columns: employee ID, month number and quota amount. What we can see here is the accumulation of steps as we go along the way. So what we can do is remove rows with 0 quota amount. So to do that, in the quota amount column header, we can deselect 0, which we see there, and then we can click OK. Now let's remove the M prefix. To do that, let's select the month number column. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go to the Home ribbon tab and we're going to select the item to replace values, which appears over here in the right hand side. In the dialog box, we're going to type in the letter M as value to find, and then we'll replace with nothing. So we're going to click OK, and that removes all of the M for us, so that looks good. To change the data type, we can right click on the month number column and change the type if you like. So to do that, we're going to select change type here, and we are going to select it to be month number. And that starts to look better. So what we're going to do now is, this is an intermediate query and therefore it shouldn't be loaded to the Excel worksheet. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to save the connection. So to do that, we're going to go to the home ribbon at the top. We'll select close and load to, and then we get the loads to window appear. Then we're going to select only create connection, which we see here, and that looks just fine. And then we're going to click the load button, and when we go back to Excel, we can see the quota extract query appear on the right hand side. So what we're going to do now is some advanced query editing, which allows us to work directly with the query script. So in order to do that, we'll go back to Workbook Queries and we will select the Edit button just here. In the View tab, we're going to select the Advanced Editor tab just here. And what we're going to do is insert a variable, and that variable is going to be called file path. Then all we need to do is press enter, and that should just go through. So when we look here, what we can see here is the actual file path is hard-coded in. We don't want that. We want to, in the third line of the script here, we want to take this, and then what we want to do is replace the file path so that it actually is the same as our variable name. So we're going to call that file path. And what we're going to do is we are going to take out quotation marks. And that now looks much better. So once we've done that, we click on the Done button, which we see down at the bottom here. And then we go back to the Home ribbon tab and we do Close and Load, and our job is done. So what we want to do now is create a new query called Quota, which will extract data from all the CSV files in the Quota Extracts folder. We don't want to do them all one at a time, because when we look back, we see there's quite a few of them. So in order to do that, we're going to make a query that will result in 3 columns: the date, the employee ID, and the quota amount. So let's go back to the Power Query button, and then we are going to select from the folder. So to do that, we go from File, and then we do from Folder, which is the bottom option here. Let's find the one that we want, which we pasted earlier. Then we click OK. So what we see here is we have the name of our file, we've got the CSV, and we've got the folder path there. We want to rename it so it's more sensible, so we're going to call it Quota, and then click OK. And we see the rename appear. So then what we're going to do is we're going to select the folder path column, and we're going to select name as well. And we do that by clicking down in the Shift key. Now that gives us everything. We don't want that. What we do want is folder path. Then we select the Control key. Now what we want to do is merge these columns together. So to do that, what we're going to do is in the Add Column ribbon just in the middle, and then we're going to look for the option Merge Columns, which we see just there. So we're going to give it a new column name, and the merged columns are going to be called File Path. So now what we want to do is select the columns that we want, and remove the columns that we don't. So the ones we want to keep the name, and we want to keep file path as well. And then we want to select the option to remove other columns. Now we're simply left with the two column names. So what we're going to do now is we can see our file path is here and the name as well. So we're going to tidy up the name column, and to do that we are going to replace some of the values that we see in it. We don't need CY anywhere, so what we're going to do is take out CY simply by typing it in and then replacing it with nothing. Then we're going to split this column. We're going to split it by number of characters, so we remove the year name from the file. So we're going to insert the number 4 for the years, and we're going to select once as far left as possible. Then we click OK. What I'd like to do is rename this to year. It will make more sense. Now when we take year, we're going to select this column and then we're going to remove it. Now that starts to look better. So now what we want to do is add a column. So in order to do that, we're going to go to the Add Column ribbon tab and we're going to add in some code. We're going to use the Add Custom Code column dialog window here. So what we're going to do is click on File Path. So what we will do now is we will set a custom code formula, and this will help us to create a new column. Once we've done this, we click OK. And that gives us a table which lets us know, this icon here lets us know that we have selected all of the columns at this point. And we're going to rename the columns. So if we select this icon here, what it does do is it tells us that all of the columns have been selected at this point. And what we want to do is rename them. So there we are. So instead of custom employee, we want to rename them. Rename that to employee ID. Rename this one to month number. And we'll rename this one to quota amount. So once we've done that, what we're going to do is insert a new column named date to produce a date based on the first day of the month for the year. So to do that, we're going to add another custom column. We can see that at the top. The new column name is going to be called date. And we have the formula just here. And that is going to give us the first day of the month number of the year. So I'll copy and paste that in. We've got no syntax errors there. So once we've done that, we can click OK. So now what we're going to do is remove some columns that we don't need. Now we do want to have date, we do want quota amount, and we don't need month number. That would just confuse our users, so we're going to remove that one. File path will also confuse users as well, so let's remove that. And then we will remove year too, because we have date, so we don't need both. So what we want to do is move these columns around a little bit. We normally expect the dates to be at the beginning, so we're just going to move that to the side just there. Then that starts to look better. And now what we want to do is change the data type so that it's a bit more clear. So we're going to change the data types of the 3 columns. So quota amounts, we want that to be a whole number. So to do that, we go to Home. It says data type at the moment is any, but we want that to be whole number. We also want to change employee ID so that it's whole number as well. The dates column should be identified as a date type. So that starts to look better. We can see lots of steps have started to appear here. So now what we want to do is load the query. So we go back to the ribbon, the home ribbon here, and then we want to select close and load to. At this point we do want to add the data to the data model. So we check that box and then we click load. We can see our data is loading in the right hand side over here. And we see that we have a total count of 777 rows. So what we could do is see if we could load in some more data. So if we go up to one folder, we see we have another folder here, which is quota extracts for the year 2014. So let's copy all of these files to the clipboard and then return to the quota extract folder, and let's paste them in. Now we want to reload our query, so it takes in these files as well. So to do that, what we're going to do is refresh the query. So what we can do then is we need to load Power Pivot. We can see that Power Pivot does not appear here, so let's enable it. So to do that, we go to File, Account, Options, go to Add-ins, go to COM Add-ins, and we need to select the option for Power Pivot just there. Then we see that Power Pivot appears at the top here. So what we want to do now is go to the Power Pivot window, and we can see that that has now appeared. So let's go back to the Power Query and we will then refresh that query. So to do that, we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to click on the Home ribbon and we are going to look for Refresh. I'm going to refresh the preview here. So now what we're going to do is click close. Close and load. And now we have 876 rows loaded at this point. The reason for this is the data that was in the CY to 2014 files was now added to the quota extract folder, and Power Query has now picked up the new data. So we can see that because the number of rows is actually increased just there. So what we want to do now is extend the PowerPivot data model so it can take advantage of our cleansed data. The new query becomes a table in the PowerPivot data model and can be easily integrated with existing tables. So now we're going to go to the PowerPivot query window. We're going to click on Manage. And then we're going to click on the diagram view over here. So what we want to do now is find the rest of our tables. So to do that, let's take quota, and we'll take the date field and we'll connect it to the date field over here. Now what we want to do is take the employee ID and attach that to the salesperson employee ID as well. Now that starts to look a bit better. So we could take it to original size, but that's a bit big. Fit to screen maybe makes more sense. Okay, so now what we want to do is go back and see if the Power Query is integrated into the data model. Calculations can be added to it now. So let's go to the quota table, and we're going to go to that and see how it looks. Let's select the quota amount column, and we'll change the data type to currency. Start to look better there. At the moment it's whole number, then now it appears in dollars, so that will be more meaningful to the users. So now what we want to do is add that data, create a small measure down here. So what we want to do now is we've created a sum, but we want to rename that calculated field so it simply reads quota. That will mean that there's less ink in the page. It's just simply easier. People understand what that means, the quota. So what we want to do now is hide these other columns. We don't want the users to see employee ID, they'll get confused. We could also hide the date as well if we wanted, for example. But we'll leave it there. So now if we go to the Sales tab in the Calculation area, we can actually create a new calculation. So to do that, we go to the Sales calculation. We're going to enter a new calculation in DAX. And that's simply going to say sales performance equals the sales, just here. Copy and paste that there, then we press return. We want to set this format to currency as well. Moments, the format is general, but it's going to look better as a currency. That's more meaningful for the users now. So what we want to do now is change this and use this in a KPI. So right click in this calculation, and now what we're going to do is create, quite simply, KPI. So what we want to do is we've got this here, and what we want to do is change it so that the percentages are different. So we're going to move that so it's 100%, which is about here, and we'll change this one so that it's 90%. And we're going to change that so that another KPI appears. Now there are different ways that we could represent this, so why don't we choose the stars? What we might find is that colourblind people can't read this very well. They might prefer this one, for example, but in order to try and make it look a bit better, we're going to choose stars just here. Now what we're going to do is click OK. Oops, we need to select a target field from the list of calculated fields, which obviously I didn't do. So to do that, select quota, and that now looks better. So now what we're going to do is save the workbook. And we'll continue in the next session to explore more of the data and how we can visualize it.